Hi everybody, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Michael, and you're watching another episode of Star Wars News and Views. And today we're going to be talking about 15 ideas that were considered for The Force Awakens but never made it into film. Some of them never even got to the screenplay stage. A lot of this has been taken from The Art of Force Awakens, which is a book that if it either just came out or it's about to come out.
Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. You can buy it at the moment. Yeah.
And looks really cool. And we can't really show you a lot of the images because there may be copyright issues just because it's an art book. It's like showing photos from an art book is like showing clips from, I don't know. Anyway.
It's only $25 on Amazon. So.
Yeah. I'm probably going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is that Kylo Ren's character was originally named the Jedi Killer. And so at first he was like a tall character with red skin and he had a monocle over one eye, which is kind of like, when you consider the final version, is kind of weak.
Yeah.
But then they were asked to sort of like Boba Fett up the character and, add bits and pieces and stuff like that. And then, at that point he started resembling more like the Kylo Ren that we know.
And love.
And also the Jedi Killer was supposed to gain his power from the sun. So in his headquarters he had this chamber that faced the sun and he would go in there and absorb the sun's energy, and that's what gave him his strength. Which just, I don't know.
It seems like a bit like a silly idea to me. I'm kind of glad they ended up changing it. I like Kylo Ren, and I don't know, the Jedi Killer's kind of a silly name.
Yeah. And also another idea that's pretty interesting is that Kylo Ren was supposed to be a literal Darth Vader impersonator, and J.J. Abrams liked the idea that there was someone out there going around.
To screw with Luke.
Yeah, trying to mess with Luke's head.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting too.
Another one is that we could have gone to like a snowy ice volcano world, I guess. So like, Starkiller Base is like all like snowy and everything. Some of the original concept art, they had kind of thought that there'd be like an active volcano there and everything in this base. So you'd sort of get this fire and ice motif going on when they were like fighting, and like had this sort of like dichotomy between the like sort of light side and dark side and like fire and ice. And that idea was dropped. However, they were also thinking of, like, the Starkiller Base shoots out the sun, like the solar energy at things. They were thinking of that shooting out of the volcano too, which sounds kind of cool, but a bit much. I think, it's a little bit better that they kind of just stuck to one thing instead of kind of overloading us with it.
Yeah. And another idea was, this was one that was, I think, developed by Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know if it was supposed to be a dream sequence, but there's this image of Luke Skywalker being swallowed up by sand, and he's just kind of laying there, like just sinking into the sand, and then he opens his eyes, and it's really really spooky. Obviously, they didn't use it. So one of the ideas is that you would actually see the remains of the second Death Star in the film as well. So instead of the idea of this planet with all this junk and wreckage from the previous eras, instead of a desert, it was more of a swampy place, and it has an ocean. And we see Rey, who's actually in that, at that time was called Kira. That's where that rumors always came from. Mm-hmm. You see the second Death Star underwater. And I don't like part of it anyway. And they have to actually take the Millennium Falcon in the underwater to go there. And you see like the Emperor's old throne room and there's
like dead bodies
and stuff. But how did the Death Star get to this other planet? Like, I know it was near Endor. It would be fine if it like crashed into the
forest or something.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's probably more to that story. That's just what we know for now.
Also, there's plans in the original trilogy for Darth Vader to have like a castle, right, that he would kind of go to.
Yeah. It's even in the first draft of Empire Strikes Back where you see him sitting on this black throne and he's surrounded by lava and he's like feeding gargoyles from a golden bowl, and it's really trippy.
Yeah, they're actually thinking of putting in Darth Vader's like castle into this, which never really made it in. It would have been kind of weird to kind of get this retcon that Darth Vader owned a castle this kind of like late into the series.
Yeah. I kind of like it though. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean they kind of kept it along because it sort of seems like the Knights of Ren and everything, they're going back to this sort of medieval thing. Yeah. So they didn't really go with Darth Vader's castle, but they kept the like medieval motif that they wanted to, I think.
Yeah.
Another part of the book says that there might have been actual space pirates in the movie, and they were gonna force Rey to like walk a plank and actually go into the water and like really resemble space pirates. I guess we didn't really get those, but we got something like kind of similar.
Yeah,
they're like smugglers, and it was very like piratey anyways. It's sort of this like Mexican standoff that happens, and like I don't know.
Yeah.
It seemed like they kind of kept the idea of space pirates, but not like actual space pirates.
Not like based on like pirate mythology.
Yeah.
Another one is that Anakin Skywalker's ghost could have come back. There's artwork done by Ian McKeag, and Ian McKeag was actually a designer on the prequel trilogy. In fact, he's my favorite designer of the prequel trilogy. I really like his style, and some of his ideas are really out there and weird. And so there's production artwork of Hayden Christensen version of Anakin Skywalker as a ghost talking to Luke. Obviously, that was dropped.
Yeah.
But we had a rumor recently that's saying that Hayden Christensen's being considered to make an appearance as a ghost in the new film. So in that draft at the time, Luke was going to be more of a central character and not just like a cameo at the end. And they said no, that would not be as good. Let's move him just to a cameo, and I guess in the next film he can have more of a role.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, like, are they going to bring back that idea, and now they're sort of reaching out to Hayden Christensen to reprise it?
Yeah, or if that was also just one idea that was completely cut out of the other one, and we heard this rumor sort of like delayed after a long time.
Because it's been so recently. One of my ideas was that maybe there was an early copy of this book, like before it gets printed. They have to have it ready months before it's shipped to stores, right? So maybe someone confused that.
But also, they just started refilming with Rey and Luke like together for the scene on Killing Michael. So maybe that's when Anakin's ghost is supposed to come back. So who knows? Another one is that Poe Dameron, who originally was called John Doe in the artwork, they said that they actually toyed with him being a Jedi and then also a bounty hunter. I guess they weren't really sure what kind of character they wanted to throw in the mix of all these new characters. But then they decided to just go with an X-Wing pilot.
One other thing to mention, though, about Poe Dameron is that he was supposed to be killed in the TIE Fighter crash, like pretty late in the game. Like, I don't know if it was during filming that they changed it, but once they started working with Oscar Isaac and they cast him, they realized, like, oh, he's really, like, we should keep him around. And that's one reason why he just kind of appears at the Rebel base. It's like, hi, guys, I survived somehow.
Yeah.
But Alan Dean's novelization actually explains how he got off, and he met this guy and took him to a town, and but that's interesting.
Another early draft was that Starkiller Base would have been on Dantooine, the planet where in Episode 4 Leia tells Darth Vader that the rebels were, and they find out is deserted.
Yeah, so I guess the idea is they went there, they discovered it's deserted, so they like inherited it, and they've just been using it ever since. So one idea that J.J. Abrams had that he thought it would be clever to kind of like almost spoof the beginning of the original Star Wars. So you'd have a pan down to the planet, and then dramatically the Star Destroyer comes overhead, and you think, oh, it's like Star Wars. And then you realize it has a big hole ripped in its belly, and there's actually like space smugglers and stuff pulling parts out of it. So it's just kind of been like lost at sea type of thing, and they're just salvaging parts.
I guess it didn't completely cut to the cutting room floor because there was a crashed one obviously on Jakku, and they were just like going through it when it was like already deserted and landed. And I guess another point about that is that the like episode 7 was already a lot like episode 4, so maybe it was a good idea to kind of stay away from too many homages to it at this point. Another thing that was shown in the book was that the rebels were originally going to have a ginormous ship called the Warhammer, which was able to like punch a hole into like a planet's shield and then send a bunch of smaller ships into it. That was obviously dropped. I mean, to be honest, the rebels didn't really seem they had any sort of big weapon. They just had X-Wings that they kind of shot in. But what's kind of interesting about that was that we had reported earlier on like sort of rumors that they were going to sort of take over a Super Star Destroyer or something, is what we had heard originally.
That they had a massive super ship.
But maybe it was actually the Warhammer, which was sort of the rumor that we heard originally.
Yeah, it's interesting to see all these past, like some of them were like partially true, but based on like maybe they had incomplete information. So.
Yeah, like someone saw the Warhammer and was just like, oh, that kind of looks like a Super Star Destroyer size, so I'm just going to think that's what it is and like report on it. But you know, they didn't get the whole picture.
So the opening scene of the movie where Finn defects and escapes was originally slightly different in one of the versions of the script, or at least working, maybe it was even before they had a script. But also, one thing of note, his name was Sam in that version, not Finn. So the way that Sam defects, like the moment that pushes him over the top, in the final film, he sees them slaughter the villages of Jakku. But in that one, he sees the rebel soldiers being lined up for execution, and they toss their bodies like out the window into space, and which is like pretty cold depths. Anyway, so that's what makes him realize that he has to help Poe Dameron escape. And of course, at that time, he was called John Doe. And when they crash, they're like captured by an alien tribe, and one of the aliens performs this healing ritual on Sam, so that he gets like reborn the hero or whatever. Obviously, that was like maybe a little too strange for the film, so they took it out. But it's an interesting idea of them, lining up all the rebel hostages and then just tossing them like alive into space.
Yeah.
Another pretty cool idea is that Supreme Leader Snoke was going to be female at one point. And the idea is that she would be like extremely beautiful, so that you have this contrast between this really evil person and this really beautiful looking person. And I believe McQuarrie did some concept art for the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back, of the Emperor being female. So I don't know if because we know that they kind of based a lot of the designs off his early work.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they got that from that.
It'd be interesting to see too, because most of the dark side characters you've seen have been like really ugly. I mean, that's kind of like, the stereotypical evil thing is being this like really sort of like old, disfigured
decrepit person. Yeah. And anyone that's beautiful is like good.
Yeah, and then Anakin, when he just turned to the dark side, he still looks good, and then boom, he gets his face burned off, and he's like ugly again and everything.
Yeah.
Another idea that was dropped was that originally The Force Awakens was going to be titled Shadow of the Empire, which was too close to the novel Shadows of the Empire. And I guess they really wanted to change it and not get confused with the book itself, especially because there's already kind of confusion of dropping EU stuff and then continuing the movie series in a new direction.
And if word got out the film was going to be called Shadow of the Empire, people would think they're making a movie adaptation of the book, and it'd be all sorts of confusion about it. Pablo Hidalgo actually revealed that on Twitter, I believe, the other day, and he said he was glad to see that go.
The Force Awakens is kind of a catchier title and sort of invokes more of the adventure aspect of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, if you watched a lot of our earlier videos, all the time this keep coming up that the main character is called Kira. Kira Solo, in fact. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, her name is supposed to be Kira. And then the trailer came out, and they had the trading cards, the Topps trading cards that said her name is Rey. And we're like, wait, is it Kira Rey? And it's like Kira Rey and Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Which I guess could still be the case. But that certainly explains why that rumor kept popping up. Is because in the early draft, she was called Kira. Not Kira Solo necessarily.
Yeah.
But at least Kira. And actually, Finn was also called Sam, which we never heard about. And Poe Dameron was known as John Doe, which I don't know if that was a serious...
No, I'm sure
thing.
That was just a placeholder.
They couldn't think of a name, so okay, let's just call him John Doe for now.
I mean, we know that J.J. Abrams was the one to come up with Poe Dameron's name, so maybe they kind of just waited, and he's just like, I've got an idea for it, since we haven't thought of one yet.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see sort of this Kira thing finally being resolved.
Explained, but we always wondered about that.
Yeah, because we heard it so early on into the filming of Episode 7 that we're like, how could this have been wrong the entire time? But I guess they that was something that had been from really early draft, and then later on, once they actually got to filming, they changed it. Okay, guys, so that's it for 15 ideas dropped from The Force Awakens. Be sure to check back. We're going to start doing some more of these list ideas because I think it's working out pretty well. Let us know what you think about any of these things that were dropped from the movie in the comments.
Some of them are really interesting. Yeah. Some of them don't work as well.
And, be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe, and we'll see you next episode.